All right, everybody, we are back. VantiSports.com YouTube channel content coming at you. Justin Angel is here with me. Sean Williams here. Thank you all for joining us again. We have done our 2021 recruiting class recap. I think that one came off with flying colors. What do you think about the reaction to our recruiting recaps, Justin?
I thought it was really good. Just if you got any questions or anything, make sure you put it on the board. I like to interact and answer as many questions as possible. So
There you go. You're all about the interaction, man. So.
that's correct, man. Love it, man.
We appreciate everybody. We've picked up a lot of YouTube subs, so we appreciate that. And always a reminder to go to our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, and then hit the notification bell that'll notify you whenever new videos pop up like this one we're doing right now. And we appreciate the support. And as always, go to vandysports.com, subscribe to vandysports.com. It is $9.95 a month if you sign up for a year. Really good content, and obviously we always joke about the $9.95 a day plan, where you can get the real inside scoop from Chris Lee. So,
Yes. Daily tips from Chris Lee.
so we're keeping the creative kind of content going here, and we kind of talked about this before we really did the recruiting 2021 recaps here. So, obviously it's kind of good timing, and we kind of noticed it last week or over the weekend. I can't remember, but obviously Vanderbilt's updated their roster for this season, and kind of some eye-popping things that we kind of notice come up from that updated list on the roster. So we're going to kind of dive into that, but we're going to focus on each position. So we're going to start off. Obviously, Justin's an O-line guy, so we're going to start with the O-line because
Absolutely.
we got to do what
Yes.
Justin wants to do, and he's very demanding and everything. So.
Yeah, I'm very, very demanding.
Right. So we're going to take a look at Vanderbilt's offensive line roster as it is now. Hopefully, nobody's jumped in the portal by the time we post this, but you never know. It's been
Yeah,
pop,
you don't know.
it's been popping off the last couple of days. So pull it up here, and we have our O line roster. Okay, obviously, just we'll talk about this. Just some storylines from last year. Obviously, Vanderbilt super thin at offensive line. A lot of that had to do with opt outs. Things of that nature, like Cole Clemens, Bryce Bailey, Jonathan Stewart, all opted out last year, and obviously that left some pretty significant holes in their offensive line. And that obviously ended up forcing Drew Birchmeyer to kind of make the switch from D line to O line, and he did a really, I think, a pretty good job in that role. Justin, kind of curious to think what you thought about last year's performance from the offensive line. Obviously, coached by Peter Rosamondo, who came in from Rutgers. Obviously had a super thin roster to work with. You had Birchmeyer make that switch over to O line from D line. What did you kind of think about how the offensive line performed last year as a whole, and just kind of pinpoint some things that really, I guess, kind of stood out to you overall?
Well, if you remember before the year, the thing that we kept talking about was the fact that the defense had several experienced returners coming back, and we thought with Ted Roof coming in that was going to be the strong point of the team. And then you looked offensively, and then they lose Bryce Bailey and Cole Clemens and Jonathan Stewart, Devin Cochran transfers before the season. That just wasn't looking good. And then you got Pete Rosamondo's coming in, brand new. How's he going to do? Well, they eventually have to move Drew Birchmeyer to guard about 3 weeks before the very first game, and they're going to Texas A&M. I just thought, as far as with the offensive line being thin and what he had to work with, I thought he did a great job, honestly. I know people think I'm crazy when I would tell them, the offensive line coach at Vanderbilt's doing an excellent job. When they look at the record, they end up 0-9. But with what he had to work with and the things that he was doing, I mean, I thought he did an excellent job with that. So,
Yeah, it definitely wasn't thrust into the ideal situation. Obviously, last year was just an odd year for everybody and opt outs and everything like that with COVID. But Yeah, not an ideal situation for your first stint as the O line coach in the SEC. So, but yeah, he did an admirable job. I thought Birchmeyer did a really good job on the offensive line too. Whenever he made that transition, obviously you look at the roster right now. He's kind of Birchmeyer's listed. He's coming back 6 years senior. He's listed as an O lineman slash D lineman. So I'm kind of curious. My next question, I guess, is related to him. Where do you think he ends up, Justin, this year? Do you think he ends up back on the D line, or does he end up staying on the O line?
Well, that's a really good question. One thing, don't really know what Coach Rye is wanting from his offense. So that's one thing. It kind of plays into that. Are they going to be a predominantly sling it around team that throws the football and lets Ken Seals do his thing, or are they going to be a inside zone, some gap scheme stuff, just trying to get downhill running the football? I would have to say, with Clarkley being a defensive guy, that there's probably going to be some wanting to run the ball type. So if you're wanting to be more physical, run the football, I just think that you would want to see people like Drew Birchmeyer and Cole Clemens and some of your bigger bodies in there at the guard position that can get some movement. I also think if we're wanting to put the emphasis on protecting Ken Seals and doing those things, then I could see a situation where Tyler Steen plays tackle, Junior Uzebu, who's coming in, plays the other tackle, and then you pop Bradley Ashmore in, and then you're more athletic, but you're not quite as big as what you could be. So, I think there's several different routes that they could go. Just looking at it, I would say that Birchmeyer probably sticks on the offensive line, and I would say that he probably has a better chance at moving up to the next level playing offensive lines. But I'm not sure on that.
That's a good take. That's an interesting take. And so, Will mentioned just kind of a recent article from by Pro Football Focus, kind of rating the offensive line groups for every college football program this last season. Vanderbilt came in 104th in that list. Obviously, not well from a grading standpoint from Pro Football Focus, but just to kind of highlight that and just talk about their top performing offensive lineman is somebody you just mentioned, Tyler Steen. He was the highest ranked offensive lineman according to Pro Football Focus, followed by Connor Mignon. I hope I'm saying that right, but obviously the Central Connecticut State transfer, and then followed by Bradley Ashmore. They're all Steen was a 66.8, Mignon was a 63.4, and Ashmore rated a 62.5. You kind of mentioned Steen. What did you like about each of those guys? Just Steen, Mignon, and Ashmore. What'd you kind of your feelings about all those guys based on last year's performances?
Well, I thought Steen did a really good job at left tackle. That's not something that's easy to do in the Southeastern Conference, and he had played mostly right. And then when Devin Cochran moved on, then he moved over to the left. Um, he did have some moments where it wasn't really good, but that's going to happen for any young offensive lineman you got in the Southeastern Conference. But I thought he was very solid, especially in the pass game portion of it. I think that's something that he excels in. Bradley Ashmore, he's a guy that, if you remember, I was super high on him coming out of high school. I thought his junior film was just incredible. But Ashmore came in. He was the able to start there at right tackle. He's a little more athletic than probably what I thought he was, but good in the run game. Probably needs to get a little bit stronger, to help him out in there just a little bit. You could see that, he kind of looked like a true freshman in there at times, but you could definitely see the flashes of somebody that's going to be really solid. And the other lineman you're talking about, transfer from Central Connecticut State, if you look at him, he's not your prototypical SEC offensive lineman, but I thought, he wasn't overly athletic. He wasn't just overly big or anything like that. But you could just see, a very good technician, really good with his technique, played extremely hard. And that's something that you got to give to Rosamondo. If you've got someone like that and they're just playing above, their ability, I mean, that goes to him. And then I would be interested to see what was Grant Miller. What was his?
I did not write that down, so I
Oh, okay,
apologize.
all right, I got you.
I just wrote
But
down the three highest rated guys, and those were the guys that were
okay,
rated in the
all right. Well,
60s.
Grant Miller is one that I was extremely impressed with this past year. I think he's got a shot at the NFL if he has a solid year this next year at Baylor. But
Well, that's kind of a good transition, and I didn't know if you were, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I was going to
no,
ask
you're
you.
good.
That was the next question on my lexicon here. Was obviously Grant Miller, grad transferring to Baylor, so that leaves the gap open there at center. So who do you see taking over that position? Who are the main strong candidates for that one?
Well, the three that you really point to is Kevo Wesley, Julian Hernandez, and then you also have Dan Dawkins. Those three have experience playing that position. All three have done that. I personally haven't seen Kevo Wesley play a whole lot, so it's hard for me to judge that. From the small amount of practice and things that we've been able to see in the past, really excited about Julian Hernandez. I think that he does an excellent job. I'm not sure about the snapping and how that is because if you're going to play center, that's the number one thing. Because if you ever want to mess something up in an offense, a bad snap, it goes a long way there. But I think Julian Hernandez can definitely do that. And then you got Dan Dawkins, who, has been a little inconsistent. He's been in and out of the lineups, played center, guard, different things. But it'd come down to those three, I would imagine. And I would say, just from my personal opinion, from what I've seen, I would think that Julian Hernandez may have the nod there. But you could also say that Julian Hernandez ends up starting at guard as well, and then that would open the door for Kevo Wesley possibly. So,
Yeah, and that a smooth transition to the next question I have, which obviously going into this season, seeing the roster how it is right now, how it's laid out, how do you kind of see this starting offensive lineman shaking out? Like, just kind of go through who are your what are your thoughts on the offensive line starters? Just kind of run through it real quick for us.
well, the one thing is, you talked about the opt outs, the guys that opted out last year that came back in. Okay, you got Bryce Bailey, Cole Clemens, Jonathan Stewart. That's definitely going to help blaze it just from a depth perspective that you got going there. And if you really sit around and you think about, if they want to protect Ken Seals, and that's the main thing that they want to do is to make sure that their young quarterback stays healthy. I just think that there's a situation where you could play Tyler Steen at one tackle and then Junior Izebu at the other. And then and you also got depth there with Braden Bass. I think he's got a shot to be a good football player. And then you add in Jonathan Stewart, who most people thought was going to end up being a starter this past year. All right, you got four solid options there at tackle, obviously with Steen being the best out of that group. Uh, Ashmore, I think he could possibly play tackle, but if you're going to have those two out there that are better pass protectors and doing those things, I think you could see a situation where Ashmore is one of your interior linemen. And then when you're looking at your other interior lineman that you got in there, Drew Birchmeyer, all right, and now having a full off season, working on the offensive line, doing those things, that's only going to help his game. You got Cole Clemens. All right, they got him listed at 6'6", 344 pounds. That's just absolutely a huge human there. All right, so
He was
Uh,
large the first time you laid eyes on him and fell in love.
Oh, he was a large human being first time I saw him at camp. Yes, it was not hard to pick that guy out. I can tell you that much. But
It's like the hearts just came out of your eyeballs whenever you saw him. It's like a cartoon, right?
Chris Lee was looking at me like I was about half crazy. I was like, who is that guy? I got to know who that dude is." So, uh, but yeah, you got those guys in there. You got Julian Hernandez that plays. Got uh, could possibly play guard or center in there. I mean, the good part about Blazik is, and we've already talked about this just a little bit, is the fact that I think he's walking into a much better situation than what Rosamondo walked into last year. And part of that had to do with the opt outs and those things. But I just think he's walking into a decent situation, and he's got several decent parts here to work with. I mean, you got 8 to 9 guys that I think could contribute and do well here on the offensive line, and then also having your freshman offensive lineman coming in early. I honestly think that the only one out of that group that could possibly play early would be Castillo, and he's more of an interior guy as well. So it'll be interesting to see how he moves the parts around to do those things. But he's definitely got something to work with. And I still say this: if they could have somehow kept Grant Miller around, they would have definitely been super solid on the offensive line this year. And even without him, they do have the depth to plug in there and still be good.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and you actually answered my next question. I was going to ask you about the freshman coming in, and you kind of answered that as in terms of Castillo. I know
Okay.
you
I'm
said,
sorry about that.
no, you're good, man. You're good. I like it because we're on the same wavelength, man. You know what I'm going to ask you
Right.
next, and I know you really like Castillo coming in among the freshman group, and obviously you mentioned Bradley Ashmore having a pretty good season last year. It seems to be the best of the freshman bunch that came in last year too. So yeah, really good stuff. I mean, obviously, it seems like to you, and I think to me too, the most glaring issue of this team is who's going to be the center, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's
obviously,
whoever's going to be the center.
yeah, and obviously,
And I mean, I think that even with if you got Cole Clemens playing in there, that's just a huge interior guy that you got. I Drew Birchmeyer, I mean, as strong as he is, that was the one thing when we were covering him and his recruitment when he was coming out of high school was, how strong
mhm,
that he was. I mean, just having possibly two guys like that playing guard, I mean, that could definitely help big time in the run game. All right. And, losing Keon Brooks, like we've mentioned recently, um, that offensive line is going to have to play well, probably to run the football. So,
yeah, yeah. Obviously, a big blow for Vanderbilt earlier this week with Keon Brooks announcing that his intention to transfer and he officially entered the transfer portal today, actually, which is Thursday when we are recording this. Um, So yeah, obviously, but yeah, you mentioned obviously the number one goal for this offensive line unit is to protect Ken Seals. I mean, that's it,
absolutely.
right? Got to
And
be.
that's the thing about it is they've recruited a lot of tackles,
Mm,
recently. So I mean, they've definitely got several of those guys that could fit that part there. So, and then you bring in a guy that started at West Virginia
right.
that comes right in. I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
that
you got
gives
to
you some pass protection.
yeah, you got a guy like Ken Seals that had the year he did last year, even on an 0-9 team. I mean, he had a great year, true freshman coming in, just kind of took the reins. You got to once in a you just to have a quarterback like that to come in and make an impression as a true freshman, that's your number one priority to keep him safe and sound back there for,
Absolutely.
especially if you
Yes.
want to rebuild this team and this program into a winner. And he's the guy. I mean, you've got your golden ticket right there at quarterback. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And that's the one thing, a lot of people talked about with that job is it was a lot of people liked it just for the simple part that they had Ken Seals and you
Right.
had somebody that you could build around.
Exactly.
That's why I think if you got somebody like a Uzebu who can pass protect extremely well, then why not just put him and Steen in there at tackle together and go with it? But I could also see from the other standpoint, I mean, if you end up with Bradley Ashmore playing one tackle and Steen the other, I mean, you're still in a pretty good situation as well. So
Yeah, a lot of good options at offensive line, like you said. Some pretty good depth there, especially on the offensive tackles and in the guards too. And I think the biggest question mark is going to be this, center position, getting that figured out. And hopefully, if that goes well, I mean, you should be pretty set for next year. So, good stuff, Justin. We'll continue this going, but that was the offensive line recap. We're just doing some roster recaps here as Vanderbilt gets ready for spring practice and just kind of going through and doing some previews here. So we appreciate you guys listening in. Once again, a reminder, like our and subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the notification button that will let you know when we drop our videos every time. So we'll keep these things going. We'll go through every position and kind of do a recap and a preview on the roster. Moving forward, we appreciate you guys listening to us, and please subscribe to vandysports.com as well.